All right, everyone. Hello. Thank you so much for joining. Welcome to Mapping Sports Deserts, New Tools to Assess Need. My name is Ruby Avila. I am with the Project Play team. I'm a program associate here with my colleague Marty Fox, moderating this session with our amazing panelists here. In this session, we will explore how city governments, national sports governing bodies, and nonprofits implement and develop mapping tools and landscaping technology to assess accessibility, safety, and quality programming for all youth to access sports. So today we have the pleasure of meeting these amazing panelists who I work with and learn from. So we have Dr. Matthew Kelley from the Action Mapping Project, Director Jeff Lambart, Director of Analytics from the City of Boston, Mal Mizen, Managing Director for Kinetica North America, and Tim Gable, Chief Product Officer for the U.S. Soccer Federation. Senior Director, Product Marketing. My apologies. So today we'll be hearing from each person present their data collection tool, and we will then have time for Q&A afterwards. I'll pass to Marty for some words as well.
Really excited to have you all here. 63 by 30, it's in the name. It's a really data-driven initiative. One thing that's clear to us working with groups like Team Snap, when you heard from Pete this morning, is that there is so much data out there in youth sports, but we're only tapping into a fraction of the analysis that can be done with that. So we're really excited to have these panelists up here because they've all come up with really innovative solutions of visualizing youth sports data to identify those gaps. So we're excited to share those with you.
Yes, welcome in, welcome in. So whether you are a community leader, a policymaker, or just interested in sports and in the industry here, get ready for a great deep dive into these innovative technologies that will ultimately help, the most underserved and the kids that deserve to play. All children receive access to facilities, programs, and opportunities. So without further ado, I'll pass it to Dr. Matt Kelley.
Okay, you're going to be seeing a lot of this in the next 40 minutes. We've all got our own laptops, and we couldn't figure out how to coordinate. So I'm sorry, and I think Ruby said throw this out the window. I'm not going to do that. I'm going to set it right here. I'm Matt Kelley. I am a professor at UW-Tacoma, which is one of the Tacoma campuses, or one of the UW campuses, University of Washington. I also run something called the Action Mapping Project. I'm going to dive right in because we only have 10 minutes, so let me start the timer here and get some things opened up here. Oh, you're going to watch this happen, are you? You're going to see a lot of that too. So I'll dive in to what we do. Where am I going to dive into? Okay, so I'm just going to start here. I run this project called the Action Mapping Project. And I'm here today in this amazing room that's a meditation room and thinking, after lunch, this is what I need. I am super excited to talk to you. I'm very enthusiastic about my work, so I'm going to stutter and I'm going to hyperventilate because I think this is something we all need to be passionate about, and I genuinely am. So I'm going to show you some things that you've never seen before, and I say that as somebody who works with data. I work at the university. I get to explore and experiment, and I've built something that I think is really fascinating and exciting to me that I love to play with. I'm just going to show you. So I'm working at this intersection of planning and recreation and mental health, and I think a lot about where our kids are in the city of Tacoma. I work in the South Puget Sound every year. My team, what's going on? This is the problem of live demos. I'm going to refresh my page because I think yeah, that's what's going on. So as I'm doing this, I work at the university. Every year, my team works with about 10,000 kids in the South Puget Sound, and we work with these kids in middle schools and high schools, and we have them draw what are called sketch maps. I used to work on paper, and now we work on a platform. My team and myself, we've developed an engagement platform that, you know what? I very much apologize, but I'm going to go old school and hotspot myself. It's always the tech, and it's always the first guy. There it is. One of them worked. Okay, so here we go. I'm honestly gonna reset my time a little bit. Sorry, Ruby. Okay. Okay, so starting over. 6330. How do we get to 6330? We have to know where the kids are. We have to know where the kids are afraid. We can't, it's not good enough to know where the parks are. Okay, I'll say it right out. If I live across the street from a park, but I'm not gonna go to it, I'm not gonna go to it. 6330 or not, you're not gonna get me to that park if there's a problem with the way that I see that park, with the way I perceive that neighborhood. We don't have those data. My job for the last, well, my whole career, 25 years, has been thinking about how do we understand people's perspectives on the ground? How do we understand things like this? Oh, come on, work. Sweet. So this is a map of 7,000 kids in Tacoma. They draw into our platform. They tell us where they spend their time when they're not at school, when they're not at home, when they're just out hanging out. The hot spots on the map, those represent, well, this is a natural area, a big park. This is downtown Tacoma. We've got a mall. We've got another big park. This is youth experience. These data are actionable. We're working with kids in schools, middle schools and high schools. We're asking them to draw on maps to share with us their experience about not just where they're at, because that's knowing one thing, but how are they getting there? How are they getting there? Because you have to be able to design for active transportation if you want to get kids out. If you want 63 by 30, then kids got to be able to get out and get there. We need to know how they're getting the places they're going. One of the challenges we have is that secondary data are only about this good, and they're really incomplete. So I'm interested in primary data. How do we collect these sorts of data? We built a platform to do it. The heat map here represents routes that kids use when they're riding their bikes, they're skating, they're walking around. On the flip side of this, I can tell you in Tacoma and in the South Puget Sound where our kids are not moving around. Now, why are you doing this, Matt? I'm working with the city of Tacoma, with Parks Tacoma. Is anybody from Parks Tacoma here? I know yeah, right on. So there are agencies in Tacoma. We're thinking differently. We're thinking not about planning for Pierce County or planning for Tacoma. We're thinking about planning for the people in Tacoma, for the kids in Tacoma. And those kids don't look one way. They're heterogeneous. They're not homogeneous. So what do we do with this? We know where the kids are walking around. We know where they're struggling to walk around. What do we do with that? How do we make it actionable? I'll show you. It's very cool. So we can index these. Check it out. It's down here in my indices, and when I restarted, everything opened up. Oh, here it is right on. So this right here, these are where we invest. These are where we invest. I'm working with Public Works in Tacoma. I'm working with Pierce Transit, which is our transit agency, to improve bus stops, because we know where kids are, we know where the kids are struggling, and so we can invest there. Those are the places where if we got $1 million, we should dump it. But this isn't good enough. The challenge you all know if you're engagement people is knowing where the problem is one thing, knowing what the problem is the other. Well, we got that. Because when kids draw on our maps, they're also, as they draw, they're sharing with us. They're sharing with us why are they struggling on those routes? Where are they going when they walk? And given the excellent large language model tools that we have these days, we can summarize thousands of comments and characterize down to a bus stop what you ought to be doing. Is it that there's no shelter at the bus stop, or that there's too much homelessness and crime? Those are different problems. We address them differently. There's a landscape, there's a contour of this opportunity that we need to tap into. So how do we turn this actionable? And I'm just walking you through our app here. We turn this actionable by bringing your parks in, bringing your bus stops into our system, into our platform. Here they are. The platform is getting there. But these are some of Parks Tacoma's parks. And let's say now I want to know which of these parks kids are struggling most at to move around. Well, you know what? These are the parks that kids avoid. How about that? So we ask kids, what are you avoiding in Tacoma? Draw on a map for us. We've drawn all those polygons, all those shapes, and now I've just sorted those parks by applying an index score. We know now if I'm Parks Tacoma, which of our parks kids are avoiding, and it's not just that, but I can also go to a park. Here, I'm gonna go to Lincoln Park. It's being avoided heavily. Scores 11 out of 15. Vibe check, what are kids saying around Lincoln Park? We've built a system now that takes a hyperlocal analysis of that content the kids are sharing with us about that park, and come on, guy, there, oh, it's coming. And it's all, there it is. So what we're doing is summarizing. Again, hundreds of comments about a park. So the Parks Tacoma can design very specifically for that particular park, right? So we've isolated the park, we've understood some of its problems. That's just a little bit of information. Let's say we want to zoom into a particular park and understand more about that park because we want to plan for it. I might check out, let's say, this park called Stewart Heights. It's a park that I've been thinking a lot about. I'm going to jump into our maps and open this up. So Stewart Heights is a park. What I've done here is magnify our data. We're seeing the data inside of the data now. Stewart Heights Park is right here. What you're looking at here are routes that kids are using to move around Stewart Heights Park. These are self-reported. They're drawing on a map, freehand. I'll show you how. Darker red, where they're at. This is a trail behind Stewart Heights Park that connects to some interior neighborhood routes. These are main arterials. We know how kids are moving around. We also know how kids, or what kids are avoiding around Stewart Heights Park. That pattern shifts, but not all the pattern shifts. The parts of the pattern that don't shift, those are opportunities. We can run that same analysis, index those same sets of data inside our platform and identify the opportunities. And there they are. We've got, this is an entrance to Stewart Heights Park. There's traffic, well, what is there? Let's check the system and ask what's going on around there that we need to improve or that we could improve. How do we engage this particular park? That's a small project. Here's a big project, opening up access to all parks in Tacoma. Here's a small project, opening up access to Stewart Heights Park. Very doable. One, not so much. I'm not gonna read all that, but essentially what we're learning here are what kids are saying. We can ask more specific questions. What are the traffic concerns? Has there been issues with violence? Whatever it is, kids share a lot. So that's great. We've got Stewart Heights Park. We've checked out our comments. What else was I going to walk you through here? I've lost track. Oh, right on. Okay. So I've opened up access to Stewart Heights Park. But how do we once the kids can get to the park, we got to make sure they want to go to the park. How do we do that? We can characterize what it is that kids like to do in that neighborhood. One of the questions that I ask kids to do is just tell me where their neighborhood is. Draw a little outline around it. When they do that, they've told us we're part of a particular neighborhood, and I'm going to pull out our subset of Stewart Heights kids and see what is it that they want to try. And we'll summarize that. We ask them real simply, what do you want to try in your neighborhood? What would you like to do at the park? And what we see, rugby. Rugby, bizarre, right? Are we going to program rugby at Stewart Heights if the kids haven't told us? Probably not. But it's there. Now, I've been told I only have a couple minutes, so I'm going to jump real quick from here to how do we do this? So we do this through an ingestion tool. It's a survey, really, but it's an app that we use in classrooms. Let me start this up. Okay. We ask regular survey questions to stratify our data, of course. Are you feeling happy? What's your favorite memory at Tacoma? These are how we generate that, those large language data. What do you do when you're not at home? Whatever. And then we draw. So draw where you're having fun when you're outside. About over here, what do you do here? I bike. I hike. Right, hike. Okay, so we're connecting data to geometries in ways that if you're a GIS person, you've never seen. Well, you can do this, but the thing is our Explorer can now analyze these data. We're collecting new forms of data, points, lines, polygons, typical geometries, but in a different way. So I'm down to like a minute. Let me just stop and tell you that what we do in Tacoma is plan with kids. Okay, there's a couple of ways to do planning. You can plan regionally. You can try to think about a particular neighborhood. We're trying to plan regionally while also planning for neighborhoods. It's possible. We built an app to do it. If you're not planning with kids, you're planning for kids, and that's how you end up with things like really poor participation rates in sports. You have fields that kids can't get to, they can't access because they don't understand what the problems are, because we don't understand what the problems are. So we're generating great data. We're just now scaling out. I'm happy to talk to anyone. We're partnering with Aspen to do some work in Beaverton coming up this spring. So very exciting times. Thank you very much.
Couple housekeeping things as Jeff is getting wired in. For the folks in the back, there are some spots in the front. This is a great time to find a seat, make a friend. We will have an opportunity for Q&A with the full panel at the end. And then just one question that I have. Show of hands, who in the room has worked in a geographic information system like this before? Okay, so a few, but a lot of the audience is sort of an introduction to this kind of data.
Cool, good to go. Awesome. Great to see everybody. My name is Jeff Lambart. I'm the Director of Analytics with the City of Boston. So I lead our city's, there we go. I lead our city's in-house data consulting team. So we work across a wide variety of issue areas, but this has been a project that's been incredible to be a part of with the Let's Play Boston initiative. You heard Chief Massot earlier talking about the initiative. Mayor Michelle Wu, one of her big goals is to make Boston a family-friendly city and doing an incredible job through the Let's Play Boston. Tyreek is here as well, our youth sports initiative manager. I'm going to talk about just a small part of that initiative, which is our youth sports facilities map. And this really, I'm the one lucky enough to be here to talk about it, but this was a huge team effort at the city. So we had Maggie Owens in our parks department. She's a parks planner. She really owns this data. I'll talk more about that and why that's so important for this being sustainable. We had Gideon in the mayor's office, really as our convener, cutting across these silos, making sure, having the vision, getting this done. And then an amazing geospatial analyst, Emma, on my team, who was a former Boston BPS high school athlete herself and really was the amazing analyst who built this great tool. I'm going to give you some context first and then dive into the demo. So this really was meant to solve two related challenges. The first of which is that there was a lack of transparency into where kids could play sports in Boston, and especially for those looking to organize youth sports, not knowing what facilities were available, how you would go through the process of booking them. You might know, oh, there is a school in my neighborhood that has a field, but not knowing how to get in touch to book it. And so especially for people trying to start up something new, really hard to find kind of this comprehensive place to go. Similarly, when we were trying to do analysis, people would come to my team with questions of, how many youth live within a 10-minute walk of a basketball court? And that wasn't a question we could answer. We could say, how many kids live within a 10-minute walk of a basketball court that's in a park, because maybe we had decent data about parks and the assets that were in parks, but we didn't have very much visibility in the schools, limited visibility in the community centers. And then, of course, outside of that, the state owns a lot of recreation assets within the city that we didn't have comprehensive data on. Then there's nonprofit providers like the Boys and Girls Club or the YMCA. Then there's private providers, or Boston has a wide variety of colleges and universities. So our goal here was really to take all that information, put it in one place so that we both could do the analysis to know where there actually are recreation facilities in the city, and then also open it up to the public so you could see anything from where's a good place to go kick a soccer ball around, where's some open fields near me, or if you're a youth sports organizer, what are the assets in the city available to you? And that's why we want to include even those private facilities and the universities, because those might not be open for stopping by on a Saturday to play basketball, but they might be open to partner with you for a one-day tournament or an interesting event that you want to hold. And that's why we want to have that kind of comprehensively. So I'm going to walk through a few examples of in the city. So you can see this is near Franklin Park, really dense with recreation assets, and a great example because it hosts so many different types of owners of these assets. So you can see here we have, this is in Franklin Field. This is all owned by the Boston Parks and Recreation Department. So you can see information about this Little League field. You can see that it has bleachers and player seating. It doesn't have lights. And then this has been a huge gain. It's actually having a link to click to go directly to our parks permitting system, where you could actually go reserve this field and see the bookings on the calendar currently. Similarly, you can see here, this is a Boys and Girls Club pool, so you'd have to get in touch with them directly, but we still want to have some information there about it. And then we have a great community organization, Sportsman's Tennis and Enrichment Center, that has a lot of tennis facilities in this neighborhood, and we have the link to go straight to their website for how you get in touch and book those tennis courts. So what we were really trying to do here is not only bring all of these different organizations, these different facilities into one place, but also kind of boil down that complexity for folks. And so you can see here that this field in Franklin Field has both a Little League field, and then also this is actually a cricket pitch, and we've permitted for cricket. And so you can imagine, this gets complicated where you have a diamond on a rectangular field. What is it actually aligned for? A rectangular field might have lines for just soccer, it might have lines for football and soccer. I'm not going to go all the way into this, but happy to follow up with anyone who wants to nerd out later, but we had to come up with a whole system of how we actually classify that. So you can see when we have, a rectangular field with football, soccer, and lacrosse, and then a little league field and a full-size field, this is how we actually encoded it in the data so that it would show up correctly. And you can see that, an example of that here, where you can see this rectangular field that's actually kind of in between these two diamonds. And so you might not be able to permit all three of these spaces at the same time. Again, happy to follow up with someone who wants more detail about this, but this great iconography and the base map, we use the Esri community base map, which some folks have actually drawn in a lot of these outlines that give you the sense of what the field looks like. And then you can actually switch to look through the satellite view to kind of see what that setup actually looks like on the ground, and that can also give you a sense of what the field might be lined for. We also, so we have another way we boiled down that complexity is these filters to make the user interface really straightforward. And so here, showing, I've already filtered for track and field, so we can see the tracks in Boston, but then also wanting to know, within that, where is there actually a jumping pit? Where could you do, long jump or triple jump on these tracks? So you can filter here for, may have scrolled past it, for jumps, and you can see some of those tracks disappear because they're not set up for those uses. And so you can actually get into that level of, football formal, is it lined for football versus football informal? Is it just the right shape to have a football practice? So you can bring some cones, bring some lines, and really trying to give people that whole visibility. Again, showing that accessibility, is this something that's permittable? Is it just always open for free play? Is it only programmed by the owner? So you can filter those things out. And then look at the owner specifically, if you only want to look at Parks and Recreation's assets. So we know we need to make this sustainable. This took a huge upfront data collection effort to do, and really, there's no magic behind it between just a lot of Googling and painstaking figuring out what has lights, what has seating. But we've incorporated and integrated with as many other existing data sets as we can. So our Parks Department already had a parks asset database of what was in the parks, and now we've expanded that to be this recreations facility database. And we're working with our partners at the Commonwealth to pull data directly from them and their GIS team. Anywhere we can, we're kind of keeping it linked into other systems that we know will stay up to date, knowing that it'll also take some manual work on our end to update this as well. And now we really have that data set for further analyses. We have the census data on where youth live. We also share data with our schools, and so we know where our students are living. So now we can answer those questions of, who lives within a 10-minute walk of a soccer field or a basketball court. We're wanting to add some photos, facilities, so people can get a better sense of what's going on there. And we also want to add some facilities, nearby Boston and some of the surrounding towns, because we know that if you're a youth sports organizer, you can see here Brookline is, cuts between two neighborhoods of Boston. If there's a facility here, that could still be really useful to you as a youth sports organizer. So our eventual vision is to include some of that more regional sense as well. We'd really love to talk to anybody who would love to implement this in their own city. Happy to talk about what we did. All these icons are open source. We could share the format of this, share kind of our lessons learned along the way, but we think this is a great resource and hope to find interesting ways to collaborate and spread it around. Thank you.
Everyone can see that? Good. All right, well, let's see what this laptop can show everyone. Everyone else has seen the first two presentations. They were all very good. Thank you for those. My name is Mizen. I'm from Kinetica. We're a data and strategy business focused in sport and recreation. Born out of Australia, but spreading our wings into the US, and very pleased to have the opportunity today. So thank you for that. We're on a mission to put hyper-localized data into the hands of decision makers like yourselves in the room today. And the reason why we're doing that is because where sport happens matters. And equally, where it doesn't happen also matters. So with the data that we bring to the table, we hope to really kind of inspire decision makers, make them feel bold, creative, to take action against those big goals that we've heard about, right? 63 by 30. We all have our big goals that we want to have a crack at. It's really about having the evidence to inform that as well. In terms of deserts. We see it in a pretty logical way. Obviously, we're data people, so we see it very much from a supply sense and a demand sense. But there's a lot of nuance in between that as well, right? So we can think of supply and simply access to places to play, but places to play have different types of amenity as well, which make it accessible or less accessible. We also think about coaches and workforces and programming. The piece that we add to that mix is the demand side. So at scale data across every community across the US and also in Australia, we get a deep dive into sport and recreation behaviours and attitudes, both across a participation lens, which is our predominant focus in the room, but also fandom. And we heard earlier, I think today, about that kind of crossover and that real kind of valuable crossover between fans and participants. So that's what we're doing. That's what our mission is. In terms of how we go about it, let's think about the data that we provide. So for explanation, I'm actually going to show some data from someone else. So this map here, so we had our plane map of the US. We've now overlaid that with some rich data. So this data is from the CDC. I hope you think that's a very reputable organisation in the US. Now, when they're looking at health and we want to plan health services, they're accessed locally. So we need to plan locally as well for that. But we can't go around and ask everyone across the US the data that we need to calculate things like rates of obesity down to a local level. So what the clever people at the CDC did was to conduct a piece of robust market research, a nationally representative survey of, say, 3,000-4,000 people, capture that health behavioural data and attitudinal information, and a whole heap of demographic data. They also then inputted census information. So for census, we know the detailed demographic profile of every single community across the US. In the middle of that, there's some funky analytics to be able to then create this map, which is basically an expected rate of diabetes for each of the 3,143 counties across the US. And they can go deeper than that, and we do with our data. So we said that's a very good idea. We also know from our work in sport and recreation that it happens locally as well. And demographics impact the sports that we play or their available choices. So let's apply that into sport and recreation, which is what we've done. So we started doing this around 2020. COVID gave us an opportunity to really kind of dive into this and create it for Australia. And we've been doing this in the US now for 2 years as well. So I've built up a lot of data sets. So let me just take that one off for now. And let's look at tennis participation. So you see that drop-down menu. There's quite a lot of information around that participation. We've got some kind of headline rates, right? So we can look at past 12-month participation amongst the people that we want to influence, our kids, and this is by census tract. So there's 85,000 odd census tracts. That's how the census divides the country up into. So we can view those as small areas, and then we can wait until this map turns up. We shall see. The internet is just...
85,000 is a lot to generate in one map.
It is. If it doesn't come up, I'll switch to some... Let's go to this one. Let's go to tennis interest. Never trust the internet. All right, what I'll do whilst I'm waiting for that to come back is I'll show you this in good old-fashioned PowerPoint. All right, so we shall pivot as we get issues. So this is what we can see here this is the percentage of kids who have played tennis in the past 12 months, down to that hyperlocal area. So if I zoom in, if I could in here, I can get very granular into where I can look at. So if in my home place in New York, I can get down to Park Slope, I can get to individual parts of that space as well. As you can see here, I zoom out, we can see this is my area that I live in. So the Park Slope, they've got Prospect Park there, and the area of Windsor. So you've got to the west side of Prospect Park, you've got high rates of participation in tennis. So those red oranges, but you can see communities on the other side of Prospect Park in those blues. So we're getting that information at a very granular level around the demand piece, which we've never really had before, right? We might do some community-based surveying, get 200 people to complete a survey, that's fantastic. This fills that gap of having that information at scale because we can go to any community that we like. From a supply side, we're working with Project Play in terms of putting our data into reports like the Baton Rouge report you saw today, really understanding those communities and the sports and recreation activities that they do. We've been working with the US Tennis Association now for 2 years. So credit to Craig, one of our champions from the USTA, has really been at the forefront of kind of bringing us through that organisation and applying that. So I'll show you a couple of examples of the work we're doing with them. This is all of their facilities across the country, so their venues. So there's 49,000 tennis venues across the country. As we've seen with the work that you've just been described, actually capturing that information, updating it is a serious task, but something that has to be done. And with that, we've got information around whether that court has light, whether courts have lights, whether it's a public park, whether it's in schools, et cetera, et cetera. But where it becomes, powerful is when we start to look at specific areas. So in honour of all the whooping that happened before and our fellow panellists, we can go to the Boston area and start to understand the network there. And then this is the network as a whole. So we can see that actually there's pretty good coverage of tennis overall, and you can see that that's just on its own map there. We can then look at filtering that network. So this map is showing, you saw lots of dots on there previously. This now has filtered that network on public park venues that have lights. So if we're going to be really stringent around something that's accessible to the people who want to influence, those underserved communities, for example, it needs to be accessible. Public parks, you feel that's a good barometer of that. And then lights, that enables people to play for more hours during the day, okay? When we look there, we've seen that actually there's quite we eliminate a lot of venues, right? So the accessibility to that form of tennis venue is lesser than we've seen before. And in the middle there, what we've dropped is a pin. So in our platform that we were going to show you, we can drop a pin anywhere on a map. And so what we're able to do is then define a community as we might see it. We can drop a pin, as I've done here, in the middle of a gap, let's call it a desert, in the supply of tennis. And then what we can do with that is also generate a detailed report for that community as we've defined it. Okay, so it's I've got to mention before as well, Brookline. We've got detailed demographic data, that's from census, that's pretty much table stakes in a way of understanding the community, but we can see there's 111,000 people within that community that we've defined. We can look at USTA data around providers, their status, how many members are in that area, their health and wellbeing metrics. We can look at how many schools are in that area, and that's in the platform as well. So, how many schools can we influence with this new platform or new venue? and then where our data comes in, right? So you've got participation data, how many adults have played, how does that compare to the state average, how does that compare to the US average? So all of that information is about layering up, providing that insight and data to make more informed decisions and allocate resources where opportunity sits, and potentially even uncover opportunities we never kind of thought were there in the first place.
And if I can add to that, Mal, you can spend hours in this platform. I have. But we are really excited about not only the data that you were able to include in the Baton Rouge report, but as Kira mentioned earlier, this is going to be a key part of our State of Soccer project in New York and New Jersey. And with that, I want to introduce Tim from U.S. Soccer Federation to talk about another interesting project that they've been working on.
Okay, welcome. We'll try to keep it moving. I love story. A pleasure and honor to be on a panel with a lot of smart people. I'm a product marketer, so I'm going to take you through framing. I'm going to take you through positioning. I'm not technical. I'm going to try to tell you a story. Stories matter, right? So, but we will go through, I swear, the technical detail. We have a lot of capable partners of U.S. Soccer in here, but it's a tool, an initiative that we're calling Soccer Everywhere. So, context and framing. This is our president. Cindy Parlow-Cohn is an impressive woman. She's a winner. And in her bio, in her gold medals, all her trophies, she puts working to make soccer more accessible so that every kid can walk, ride their bike, or take public transportation to a safe place to play soccer. I bet on this woman. Soccer Everywhere, right? We just released a new in-service to soccer strategy. We have less than 18 months to a generational moment to move the game, shift structures, disrupt. Everybody's invited. This is the global game. You can see in one of our strategic ambitions, Soccer Everywhere is there. The table's big enough for everybody. Full stop, no questions asked. Laddering down, Lex is around here somewhere talking about soccer everywhere for everyone. This is, I hope, a centerpiece to her Soccer Forward Foundation. This has legs. I bet on those two women every day on this sport, right? So, I love story. I love thresholds, call to action. You're all invited. As partners, collaborate with U.S. Soccer, with each other, to create a comprehensive definition, tool, and method to address soccer deserts in our whole ecosystem, lest we forget that soccer deserts are vibrant and vital and full of life. Had the privilege of being in Kensington and Philadelphia with Love Football. I felt like I was Dorothy walking out of black and white Kansas into Technicolor in Oz. The activations that they have, entire corridors. These are vibrant. We just have to see them. We just have to work together, not least the kids who play in these pools. I'm thinking Jane Jacobs when he talks, right? So, positioning Soccer Everywhere is a data tool to reimagine how communities and partners connect with soccer as a force for good and social impact. We need you. We need your expertise. We have to be available for these kids, for this sport, right? I will keep saying, I hope you feel emotional. I hope it moves you, right? Just as these capable people on this panel technically impress you with what they do. Okay, so this is a conversation, and I want to keep it moving. So we will jump right into the tool. We have mapped. Soccer Forward is the World Cup 26 legacy project. It's Lex's initiative. We have already mapped the 11 states and 9 host cities when it comes to a facility database. We've done this. Thank you, Jack Shakespeare for Global. We have to spread the credit. We have to give the kudos, right? So there you have it. You have 90,000 sites, 400,000 facilities. Unfortunately, only a third of those sites have soccer facilities, and a third of those sites have soccer, and of those 400,000 facilities, only just a bit above 60,000 have soccer there, right? So we're doing this at scale. You can see the data layers. We'll take a walk. There's a lot of tabs open, but you can, okay? Ample dashboards. You can click, you can export. We need metrics. Use case here is soccer administrators here. Those who implement the game. But mind you, these are people, these are facilities and players that are usually in our ecosystem. So much of play happens outside the officialdom of US soccer. We need those participants. We need that action. We need that call to adventure for these players. Data is the way that we equip ourselves as practitioners. So there's ample dashboards between places, people, and programs. This is an active prototype. I am a product marketer. I think a lot about our audiences and how we get to market, right? You are the ones who make that market. Again, we need your expertise. So data is at the core of this, as are interactive maps, right? Let's see what other. So if you want to filter in on Georgia, right? This is our new home. How exciting. We're pulled by a World Cup. We're building a new national training center, $250 million. There is a new capital for soccer in America. This is your home. This is your table. I get so passionate about it. This is your table, right? But we have to make it a home. So here, when we look at all of the different places that you can play, and we see it everywhere, what type of access? Is it free, public? Is it paid, right? How's it managed commercially? Is it education? Soccer in schools is so important. That's where we need to grow the root of the game, right? Site infrastructure, car parks, floodlights. When can you play? Are there clubhouses? Primary, secondary uses, right? Field details, full-sided, small-sided. Again, some of the overlap with these very, very technical people up here. These are experts, but we won't know Boston better than somebody who works in the city government. We won't know, okay, the sites of host committees. We have to listen, we have to work together, right? But we can convene, right? So facilities, facility type, anything we can think of, from a ball in a wall to an outfield to volleyball courts where there's sand. Lest we forget about the beach women national team. That's where they train. Any high jump pit you can imagine, we can play. We need to know where these places are, what investments we need to make as facilities. What is the data? What is the use, right? And then finally, surface type. If we want to go a little bit further, here it is again for Georgia, people, places, and programs. You can see where this is going. This is open-ended. This is a prototype. It started a facilities database, but the stories, the anecdotes, the user research, the audience is what they were telling us. The reception was by and large very positive, right? Going forward, keeping it moving. Here, when you start to layer on the right, the map layers, the census data, the boundaries, here we've cut by county, right? And we filtered by free public access for primary and secondary use soccer pitches. You get an idea of what the ecosystem of access actually looks like when you're talking about physical facilities. Yet who are the players formally and informally playing, right? That's the spontaneity and the improvisation of the game. Soccer is undefeated in that manner, right? We go further, we dial into, I think this is a school district, Atlanta School District, when we want soccer in schools. So we look at education, high school, secondary, elementary, right? We can see it, right? And again, each one of these, you can hover in, the maps are interactive, open for questions. Here we put on some demographic data. This is a social deprivation index. When we actually look at where the soccer facilities are in relation to socioeconomic outcomes, we need to eliminate those barriers. We need to shift the narrative that soccer is a suburban sport, right? That's not good for access. That's not good for development. That's not good for participation. That's not for any community benefit metric that I can think of that counts, with all due respect, okay? And here, when we talk about the supply and demand side, we're almost done, probably less than a minute. Hopefully I'm on time. We have data sets at US Soccer, but if you invented a landscape and a governing model, I don't think you would do it the way we have. It is truly organic. We have state association. We have 116 members. We have a lot of data sets in referees and coaches and player registration data, but that's only formal. So when we look at deserts, lest we forget, they are a source of life, right? we can see that there's huge discrepancies in these maps right away. Who are the partners? Who are the programs? What are the funding models? What are the public organizations or private contributors? This game infects you. So there's data there. We're also looking at, it's more fun when we can actually get to best practices and look at the differences. So we can do a tail of the tape. Let's do Atlanta versus Augusta. We can do New York versus LA. It looks very different when we talk about those access metrics, about walkability, about drive time, about transport, right? We have to cross-pollinate. We have to be innovative. These dashboards that we're putting together show that. And then here's Georgia versus California. That's the last one. I could go on and on and on, but I wanted to give you narrative, frame, and positioning so that the concept would lock, so that you could see yourselves in this tool. Thank you very much. I think I'm on 10, right on the money.
All right, so we wanted to open it up to you all for the opportunity to ask some questions. Max in the back has a microphone, so we ask you to raise your hand. And then when you do ask a question, just give us your name, your city, and your organization.
Hi, my name is Scotty. I'm with San Francisco Youth Soccer in San Francisco, California. My question is that dashboard and the Soccer Everywhere, it requires a login. Is it still prototype, and when will it be available, and how can we submit data to it?
You can hear me. That's not my decision. That's Abe Geiger. That's why he's the chief product officer. I would almost be radically transparent. I want this to be out in the public as soon as possible, but I think that there's an important sequence and adoption that has to happen for that. Find Lex. She can answer that question better than me. But let's talk afterwards.
Thank you. Hi, I'm Marty. I'm with Positive Coaching Alliance, and I'm in Los Angeles. My question's for the first gentleman. You shared the maps that the kids submitted in. Can you share how old the kids are that you're using the data from?
Yeah, we're working with middle schoolers and high schoolers, so 6th through 12th grade. And we work in schools. We facilitate workshops with these kids in their classes, so it takes about an hour. We also have a curriculum that teachers use to facilitate the workshops themselves. We're thinking a lot about how to scale something that I started doing, honestly, on pens and papers with middle schoolers in like one school. So it's the problem that Mal mentions. You know, how do you talk to kids, that many kids, so that you can hear their voices when you're thinking about a city. So it's in schools, and it's middle schoolers, high schoolers, much younger than middle schoolers, and they don't have a lot of spatial cognition. They don't understand their neighborhoods very well.
Hi, everyone. Cage Leitner. My title is too long. I do too many things to list them all here, but I'm working directly with Project Play to do the next State of Play report in Portland and Multnomah County. So this is all very interesting. For the information that came from Let's Play Boston, sorry, I don't remember your name. John. I was thinking about how amazing that is and is needed so badly in Portland. But I was also thinking about all of the families that I've worked with over the years. I've done community-based work in soccer who have very low digital literacy, and just thinking about those families, if they were trying to find a place to go play, and for their kids to go play, how easy is it for people to navigate that site if they maybe have a smartphone, but they only use it for text messaging or things like that. So I was just curious about that kind of accessibility point.
Yeah, that's a great point, and I'm sure there's always more we can do. We did try and design it with that in mind to make it really user-friendly, kind of put some of the complexity behind the scenes and make it easy to use. It is mobile accessible, works pretty well on a phone, and that was definitely something we wanted to do since we knew people would be accessing it. Something I didn't show is you can actually just search your address and then give a radius near your address, and it shows, we'll list everything within a half mile of your house, and that's like another way that's maybe easier than sifting through all the filters. But yeah, it's a great point, and we definitely, I think so far we've seen more adoption and use from more of like the youth sports providers and someone who wants to start something up or find the practice field, but we want to definitely make sure that families can use it too.
Yeah, great, thank you.
And then I would add to that, I'm not sure if Tyreek is still here, but the facilities map is just one part of Boston's commitment. They've also developed a youth sports program directory that ties into the same data set as the map, and that is very user-friendly and mobile design.
Great panel today. Just thanks for all of you, super engaging. My name's Ian, I'm with the city of Rancho Cordova in Rancho Cordova, California, just east of Sacramento, the state capital. My question's for Professor Kelley. Love the participatory planning aspect of the work that you do. My first question is, what's the process for a city to engage, both on the funding and the process? And then two, bias, how y'all control for that, just in the way that we do participatory budgeting and different types of community engagement. I can see a high opportunity cost from having bias influence the planning process and not really discovering this until months or years later. So just wondering what ways y'all can control for that.
We should talk afterwards about how to engage. That's something we're working out now. We're a young project coming out of a university that up until a year ago was very experimental. Bias is an interesting question. The problem with participatory work in general is that you only hear from 12 people, and they tell you good stories, but that's their 12 perspectives. We work with a lot of people. So my career I started in South Central Los Angeles drawing on maps with 12 people, and now I'm working with 10,000 kids a year. When you work with an entire middle school, a high school, and the other middle school and high school catchment area, we're working with 33, I'm looking at my organizer, 40% of kids in a catchment area. We're getting responses from that many kids because we're in classrooms. We're engaging where they're at. So bias, we're statistically significant, our results, and the kids are sharing. It's qualitative information that's becoming quantitative and big data through the models on the back end. We can talk more about bias. It's a tough one, but we can also slice data 10 different ways. So I can tell you where Hispanic, Latina youth are scared in the city of Tacoma, and maybe that's at parks. In fact, it is at some parks, and then we can use that. So it's biased, but almost biased that we can lean into.
Hi, my name is Kimberly Thomas. I'm the Executive Director of Epic for Girls in Omaha, Nebraska. We're a equal play sports initiative ensuring girls of color have equal access to sports across our traditionally marginalized zip codes. And so my question is, and I'm sorry I walked in a little late because I was trying to get up the elevator that I couldn't find. I don't remember your name, but sorry, specifically for you, one of my questions was, what advice or moment was shared with your Parks and Rec department that garnered their buy-in to kind of create, maintain, support this effort? I think that's a huge issue in our community. And then what was the time or like cost commitment initially and upfront that was either a selling point or a barrier that you got around?
Yeah, that's a great question. We were definitely lucky to have kind of this bigger push going on from the mayor's office directly around youth sports. It definitely helped with the buy-in. And then also our parks department is really great and kind of data forward. And we had a planner there, Maggie Owens, I mentioned, who just loves data and has got into the weeds with us and really enjoyed doing it. In terms of the time commitment, it was not trivial to get set up for sure. Although, finding all this information, I would think at the beginning felt like, how are we ever going to get all the facilities in Boston? But we had a high school student, Will, he was great. He interned for the summer and, over the course of 4 or 6 weeks was able to track down a lot of this information, went out to some sites to check in person whether there was seating and lights and things like that, did some on Google Maps, did some on Google, and was able to put together this really impressive data set. So it's not, a huge unobtainable lift, but it does take some planning and upfront investment. And I think we could share the data structure too, which would really help accelerate someone else trying to do this. Yeah.
Hi there, Robin Shook, Kansas City Children's Mercy Hospital. Great session. I loved all of the presentations. It was very interesting to see how you all were looking at similar things, but took different approaches. I'm wondering if anyone has looked at the youth sports systems functions within your communities. At least that's what we call it in Kansas City. And what I mean by that is we've counted basically every youth sports program in Kansas City, and we found that 98% are like direct service programs, we call, like someone organizing a league or something like that. And only about 1% are actually coordinating among the leagues, advocating among the leagues, working collectively among youth sports providers. And as a result, we've kind of learned that, and Ruby knows some of this, she helped with our State of Play report, like there can be assets in a community that is in need, but those kids don't have access to it because it's largely a pay for play entity, and no one is advocating for those kids. So do you know of anyone that's kind of looking at things that way in terms of systems rather than, physical assets?
I can venture. Yes, the answer is definitely at U.S. Soccer, where I come from the school of Nike, where there's a direct-to-consumer business, but you also have to service your wholesalers, right, and the channel partners, right? So we think a lot about national associations and leagues, and that's why the first use case for that tool is administrators who provide that programming, right? That's officially a subset of that is the programs, the after-school programs, where soccer is just a vessel for other socio-emotional and social developmental programs that we don't do a good job of, or it's a very difficult job of tabulating, organizing, massive data collection, trust, right? So we think a lot about that, totally. That we, as a matter of fact, we have to service them, I think, almost first.
Thanks to everyone. My name is Pooja Tanda, and I'm at the University of Washington in Seattle and also at the Trust for Public Land. I appreciated seeing on many of the maps and that schools and schoolyards were included as assets, as many communities that don't have other fields may have a school. But one thing that we were working on at Trust for Public Land is this idea of community schoolyards, that can those schools be open after hours through shared use agreements and things as community assets, as parks. And I'm wondering if any of I know the Boston example, you talked about permittable, like that link is amazing. Are there other ways that you could see including that piece of information, really access after hours, particularly where shared use agreements may be necessary?
Yeah, I can start, and then so in Boston, some of the school spaces are permittable after hours. They're available, but that information was never really publicly advertised, and there was honestly some trepidation from the schools folks of putting that information out there. But I think that the decision was made, this is going to be great transparency for the community, having people actually be able to see the link to go to book it, not just needing to kind of know a person who knows a person who knows the policy. So that's something we're really excited about, is making sure people knew these are the assets that are there, and here's the direct process. And some buildings can't lock the right doors, so they can't let people in after hours, but others do permit the gym after hours, and making sure people know that.
I think that's all we have time for today. I just want to give a big thank you to our wonderful panelists. And yeah, just as Robin mentioned, everyone working towards the same goal and unique in different ways, which is really awesome. So thank you all for being here, and feel free to chat with anyone afterwards. Thank you so much.